Um,
All right, we better hit record before we get into too good of stuff here. So,
yeah, yeah.
so let's see. So yeah, let's see. I broadcasted 2 weeks ago, so that was right before that weekend of the ninth.
Yeah.
Weekend of the ninth, we didn't hear squat. Not
Did you
even.
hear stuff before that?
Yeah, opening. Well, no. So the first weekend, half our group got into several bugles. The other half never heard a bugle. So
Okay.
this past September was the least amount of bugles I have ever heard in a month of September. It
All
was
right. That was
crazy.
maybe the opposite for me. I mean, you have many more months of September under your belt than I do by an order of magnitude, but it was
Very,
every night.
very nice way of calling me old. I greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
I think I'm older than you.
Oh, 50, 52.
Oh no, I'm not. I'm 50.
See,
You
respect
guys
that.
are kids.
Yeah. I was going to leave you out of this
You guys are
conversation, but if
kids.
you wanted to jump in this kiddie pool with both feet, go right at it there. God, that is a mean mug there. Why so frickin' gay? Yes, Jay Colley, I'm talking to you.
What? What? Missed it. What'd you say?
I said, look at that mean mug right there. And I'm like, why are you looking so freaking grumpy? It's either that or you couldn't see.
Oh, it's probably because of elk season this year.
Oh, well, see, I actually just got to the first item of lessons learned this year. This was the fewest amount of bugles I've ever heard in a September.
Yep.
But
Yep.
on the flip side, this was one of the highest number of call-ins we've ever had.
Oh,
I finished the season with 7 shot opportunities
Ugh.
just for me. So
I never
so
called in one bull.
so lesson learned. Just because they're not bugling doesn't mean you can't call them in and have several opportunities within
No, no. I had some opportunities at some cows, but
the yeah.
yeah, I'm going out Friday all day for the last day.
Finish the last
See what
day.
happened. Yeah.
All right, lesson number 2. Always pack your bow, even if you're supposed to be the caller. So, yeah, I got backdoored as the caller several times. So that's a tough one too. And what's kind of funny is because on the last broadcast, I actually talked about that where I got backdoored at 15 yards. And Bryce was like, "When are you gonna frickin' learn?" Well, apparently I didn't frickin' learn because there was one day I'm like, you know what? I don't feel like packing my bow today.
There you go.
It happened again. Okay,
Yeah.
number 3. Always be ready. You never know.
Yeah.
So, and this kind of ties in with another lesson learned about the advantages of e-bikes. Those e-bikes, we rode up on more elk feeding or bedded down than ever. To always be ready, I was riding the bike in, and all of a sudden, elk just blew up right below the road that I was riding in on. So I stopped and I got the pack off and got my bow off the pack, and I let go a couple of cow calls, and that dude just screamed. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I pull out the on X and I'm like, oh, he's on the same elevation, but this road I'm on curls right around to him. So I did a few more cow calls to pinpoint his location. He bugled a couple more times. I'm like, sweet. I'm just going to bebop down this road and come around the corner and get on his elevation and kill him. I started bebopping down the road. When I come around a corner, holy shit, there's a 3-point raghorn that's bebopping down the road my direction because I was cow calling. We both came to an abrupt stop, looked at each other wide-eyed, and then he jumped off the road. And I'm like, well, crap. I wasn't ready for that, and I wasn't expecting that. So I checked the wind. Wind was blowing down. And I'm like, as soon as I get on the other side, it's going to blow right down to him. So I need to go back to the point that they blew up from and start working down that ridge. And I'm solo because I'm exploring a new spot. I work down the ridge, and he's He's bugling a few more times, and I kind of start working over towards him, and I'm like, okay, I'm on the same elevation as you, but dang it, there's this little creek in between us. There's no way he's going to drop down that creek and come onto my side. I have to get on his side. I'm standing there with an arrow knocked, kind of right out in the open. And next thing I know, here comes a really studly 95 5x5, 15 yards from me. I had an arrow knocked, but I wasn't strapped on. I really didn't pick a shooting lane. And had I actually thought about it or heard him sooner, I could have dropped down a knee because there was one little branch that was down blocking his vitals. I could have zipped him at 15 yards. So, but I wasn't ready because I was not expecting him to cross that creek and come onto my side. Because as soon as he crossed the creek and dropped down, I had the advantage. I had the elevated advantage. So, but I focused on him for a few more days. Had a few more encounters and opportunities with him. I'm really hoping that dude survives a rifle in winter season because I've got a real bad vendetta about that dude come next September. So, all right. So the other thing about the e-bikes, it's amazing riding in the dark to places, how now all of a sudden you can hear bugles. Can't do it on a regular motorcycle. Now the drawback to the e-bikes, those deraillers that hang down on the chain suck. Because when we were heading in the next morning after that big 5-point, Bryce was going in with me to be the caller, hit a rock in the trail, ripped that derailleur off. We still had another 3 miles to go. So he turned around, went back to the truck, drove into town, got it fixed. I continued in on my hunt, and then he came in later and met me. Those bikes are great on old roads. They're not that great on true designated motorcycle trails in rocky conditions. Because with those Baku e-bikes, you have the throttle that you can hit, but you're also pedaling the combination to go uphill. Well, then those pedals will bang off rocks, and that kills all your momentum. So there was a couple of days of doing that, and we were up high on the mountainside, and Bryce and I pulled up YouTube and started looking at the electric dirt bikes, not pedal assist dirt bikes. So I think I'm going to be selling my Baku and getting an electric dirt bike because we still get the advantage of going in nice and quiet, but now we don't have to pedal. And there's a couple of good brands out there that price point's good, mileage range is good. So we're just going to test them out. So,
Austin wants to do that. Let's get a couple of those electric bikes.
you know, so there's a couple of brands we've been looking at on the dirt bikes. The Talaria and the Sur-Ron are anywhere from $4,100 to $4,500, and you can get, depending on which mode, you can get 50-55 miles on them on a single charge in a mountain setting.
Yeah. There's another brand they're called GAS.
Yeah, GAS. There's also Segway. There's also Vector Vortex. Vector Vortex is actually the one that really interests me because this is a German-made brand. They tested it in the Swiss Alps, and the test they did, they loaded it with 330 pounds. They ended up going 65 miles on one charge with over 14,000 feet in vertical elevation gain.
Ooh.
That's pretty impressive for an electric motorcycle.
Yeah, no kidding.
Not too bad at all. So, all right. Don't be afraid to stay in an area a little longer, meaning don't be so focused that I have to get to this spot that you blow right through. The one morning we were riding up the trail and I stopped to let Bryce catch up and I heard a bull bugle. So just for fun, I grabbed my tube and bugled back at him, and he bugled back immediately, and we up the trail because we were heading back in after that 5-point. Later that day, we started riding the trail down. That bull actually came to the motorcycle trail where I bugled from looking for me. I was like, dang it, we didn't really have to ride that extra 3.5 miles, Bryce. We could have stayed right there at the half-mile mark and let that bull come to us. And there was several times that when we came back to the bikes and started riding back out, that there was elk tracks in our tire tracks. And we kept saying, man, we just need to stop here and stay in that area. We just need to stop here. They're obviously coming through every single time. We just need to spend time in the area. But nope, got so focused on where we wanted to go that we didn't adjust from that. We weren't that flexible. So, okay. Don't be afraid to explore new spots in your hunt area. This was one of the goals I wanted to go into this year, with establishing one new spot, which I had kind of ridden into this summer a little bit just to check it out. We went in and hunted it that first weekend. And then as I kind of expanded it a little more and checked, that's where I ended up finding this big 5x5. And the crazy thing was, a majority of the bulls that we saw were solo, not with any cows. The larger bulls were solo. We saw several 4-point and raghorns that had 3 to 4 cows, but the bigger bulls were by themselves. So little later rut this year. But I ended up.
You think that's because of the weather?
Actually, I think it's what's coming with the weather forecast for the winter. So farmers. So we're in year 3 of a La Nina. La Nina never goes in a 3-year cycle. When La Nina hits a 3-year cycle, that third year is typically a wetter year. So Farmer's Almanac forecast for our area this winter, Jay, is colder temps and above normal precipitation amounts.
It's just been so hot too. Do you think that's a big factor too?
No, not really. It's I don't know. I don't know how they tap in and how they know what the winter's coming, but like a couple of years ago, when we had Snowmageddon in what, 18, 19, 17, whenever that was, that was a late February. And, I remember a really late rut the September before that. So I went back through notes and kind of checked. So no, they kind of adjust when that peak rut's hitting, because of gestational, and they know when they have to drop, calves. But
it's just this year too, with me, none of the bulls would commit 100%. And, and I do the breeding sequence and all that, my calls were on point this year, but they would come into 60 yards. I could see them coming in, but then they would hold up.
You answered.
And then they would go.
You answered your own question there. Why they didn't come in. I could see them coming in.
Oh.
And they stopped at 60 yards.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Because remember, if you could see at that distance, they can see farther than that distance.
Yeah.
So they got to the point where they thought they should be able to see that elk.
Yeah.
So like on that 5x5 on the solo mission, every time I called, I moved. I never stayed in the same spot I was calling from. I kept just doing a banana, moving down the ridge, and then once I got on his elevation, I was doing banana towards him until I got to that creek.
So I need to move. Every time I do a sequence, I need to move.
Yep. Every time you make a sound, you're moving. So okay. So I ended up exploring 3 new spots, and it was kind of funny because one guy in our camp, when I came back and talked about this 5-point, and I said, yeah, Bryce and I are going back after him in the morning, I went inside the trailer and called Liz and was talking to her, and then Bryce came in and he's like, he's out there planning on going to the gate and walking into where you're hunting. I'm like, oh, really? I even told him when I found this spot, you have your favorite spot, he has his favorite spot, now I have my favorite spot. We don't go into your favorite spot unless you're with us. We don't go into his favorite spot unless he's with us. And now you're not going to come into my favorite spot unless you're with me. So I went out and sat by the fire, and he was sitting there planning. And he goes, "Yeah, we'll park at the gate." And I said, "Which gate?" And he goes, "Oh, such and such." And I'm like, "No, you won't." "Oh, I suppose that spot's freaking off limits now." And I'm like, "Dude, let me explore it. Let me understand all of it. You have your spots. We're not
Is this
bugling."
one of your hunting partners?
Yeah. And,
Oh,
and,
wow.
and he's like, "Well, they're not bugling in my spot." And I said, "So you're right. Let me do all my effort of riding in and
Yeah.
hiking 3 miles in and exploring these basins and find elk, and then I'll tell you, and then you can go in and kill them. How would that be?" He's like, "Well, that sounds like a good plan to me." Of course it does. Doesn't sound like a very good plan to me. I said, "If you want spots," I said, "there's other spots up here that we have not yet explored." So I said, "In fact, you can go up this such and such creek trail over there and go check that out into the basin. Because remember, we've looked down in that basin and said, man, that'd be a great basin to bugle in, or go check it out." "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah." I said, "Or you can go over here, you can go to the bull thicket." "Okay, yeah, we'll go to the bull thicket tomorrow." So we get back to camp. "How was the bull thicket?" "Don't know, didn't made it there." "Well, where'd you go? Where'd you end up doing?" "Oh, we did this and this." "So I sent you to a spot that we've gotten into elk before, and you decided not to go there." So a couple of days later, I hiked up such and such creek up into the basin on another solo hunt to go check that out. Man, I'm glad I did. There was rubs and elk, and it was awesome. That's a really cool place. I mean, it had pines, it had quakies, it had chaparral, it had sagebrush, it had meadows, it had creeks, it had springs, it had wallows, it had rubs. I was kind of impressed with that little place. So
Sounds like you got somebody lazy.
a little bit.
Yeah.
It just he's his health has been kind of hitting him. He's kind of been battling diabetes a little bit. He's 62. He still eats a ton of sugar, and just doesn't get prepared for season. So
I was going to
always
ask you if he was young.
no, no, he's only been in our camp 4 years now, 5 years now. So, um, but it's just, yeah, he doesn't come up during the summer. He doesn't look at maps. He doesn't hike or set trail cameras or any of that. And that's basically what I finally told him was, "Dude, I am not going to do all this homework." And Bryce, who's hunted with me for a long time, Bryce said the same thing. "We're up here all summer long, hiking into new areas. We're setting trail cameras. We're getting up on elevations and glassing. We're not going to do all this effort and then just tie it up in a nice little bow and hand it to you. You need to put in a little bit of effort yourself too. So you need to go explore and find new spots. You need to go explore other areas." And I told them, I said, "You go explore another area and you get into elk. Okay, you went in there before anybody else. You explored it. I will not go into that spot unless I'm with you."
That's fair.
That's how we do it.
We do too.
I mean,
So,
not with elk. I'm usually by myself with the elk, but locally.
yeah, so I don't know. We'll see what happens. So, all
You
right.
can always bring me into your camp.
Yeah. Well, and our camp's about to get a whole lot bigger next year.
Oh, see? Come on.
Well,
I'm
yeah,
not
that's
that
cool.
far.
I got
No,
the
it's
invitation.
just because my fiance has decided she's going to really focus on her bow, during the winter
Good.
and next spring and summer, and
Good.
then she's going to come out and hunt next year. And then my daughter is going to
Good
come
for
join
her.
us, and Kevin's daughter and son-in-law is maybe going to join us. And so I'm like, wow, we're going to have a lot of people.
How many people will that make?
9 with tag.
Okay, so you need 10.
We need that.
Come on.
We need that even number. There you go. So
It's always an even number, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I've got something that I'm saving for the end that uh, I guess will support the even number or reduce it from 10. We'll see. So, all right. Search for alternate routes into your hunting areas. So we have one area that we call Shangri-La because every time we're in there, it's multiple bulls, lots of elk. But it's kind of a tough place to hunt because of how the winds are. So this year we decided that, and this is funny, the individual that was checking for the easy way decided he needed a break and he was going to sleep in this morning. So I said, okay, Brandon, Kevin, you guys go into Shangri-La. Bryce and I are going to take the e-bikes. We're going to take these old roads and we're going to come in from the underside and then we're going to hop on the ridge across from you guys. And basically with the deep creek drainage filled with chaparral and buckbrush, we should have the elk in between us. So Bryce and I get over on that other ridge, and all of a sudden we pop up on the ridge, and we're looking down into this basin that we've been in that basin before, but the way we've come from a completely different trail and had to go all the way up to the top and then drop in it. So now we're looking at this, and we get a bull bugle right straight across from us. And Bryce and I look at each other, and it's like, well, nothing's over here. I said, okay. I said, let's go ahead and roll around the basin. We'll send a text to the people in camp and say, hey, bring a truck, come down the road, pick us up. We'll get them down, get them out. We can hunt our way down through the road, and we'll have somebody bring us up on the generals later, and we can walk in and get the e-bikes. So we start rolling around the basin, and all of a sudden we hear a lully-loo on the other side, a Primos Terminator over where that bull bugled from, and the mountainside just erupts with elk flooding off that face across from us. And then we're standing there, and all of a sudden we hear noise, and we look, and here comes a whole group of cows and calves and a spike. The bull bugle's down in the bottom. So Bryce and I are looking at each other, and I said, well, he's going to follow the same path they did. So why don't you get over there on that trail, and I'll watch this secondary trail if he decides to come over to this bench over here. So we're sitting there, and all of a sudden I look down, and here he comes. I see him. He's a 6-point, and I hear thump, thump behind me. And I turn around just about like this. There was a spike at 37 yards. And that's about all the consideration I gave him because I could see the 6-point coming up the hill underneath me. So even though the spike was broadside, 37 yards just standing there, well, it's kind of hard to shoot a spike when you see the 6-point coming up. So he gets up to a point, and I said, okay, if he goes right, he's going to end up in Bryce's lap. If he comes left on this trail, he's 18 yards below me. So he turns right, starts heading up the hill, cracks off a bugle. Then instead of continuing on that same trail, he makes a hard right and starts going around. So I drop back and start calling to bring him across the face. And I'm back there calling. Well, I rolled around on the face to where I was now in the other drainage, and I could hear those guys across the way calling. And so we're calling back and forth. And then Bryce comes up and he goes, did you see that spike? I go, yeah. He was broadside 37 yards behind me. He goes, why didn't you shoot? I said, because I could see the blankety blank big bull coming up. He goes, yeah, a spike came by me at 5 yards. And I'm like, 5 yards? Why didn't you shoot? And he goes, because I saw the blankety blank big bull coming up. But it was cool because with those guys in Shangri-La, then all of a sudden we sent them a text. Hey, there's a herd heading your way that has 2 spikes and a 6x6 in it. Then all of a sudden they send a text back, hey, there's a raghorn running over your direction. And so now we are here with elk in between us, and we're just messaging back and forth of elk running back and forth between all of us. And then all of a sudden, hey, bull down. What? Yeah, just shot a bull. How's the blood trail? Don't know. There's another bull bugling. Calling in a second bull for Kevin now. And Bryce and I are over on the other side going, what? But the cool thing was because we searched for this alternate way to get in there, it now taught us a better way to hunt this Shangri-La that we've hunted for 4 years now. And just a much, much better way to get in it. And going in on the bottom, we actually found, so right above Shangri-La is the Great Big Bench. I don't know if you guys have heard me talking about the Great Big Bench before. But elk in the morning come across that Great Big Bench. They go out to the points, and then they drop down. Well, we were never able to drop down there because thermals were always blowing down. So we always tried to work that in the evening. Well, now the alternate route that we came in, Bryce and I got right into their bedding area as they were dropping over. And in fact, when we were sitting there and Brandon shot the bull, and when we made it about over across the canyon to them, he and Kevin started breaking it down. So Bryce and I, being the wise, experienced individuals we were, we just sat down and got our snacks out and started eating and watching them work on this bull and started pointing on different things to do. So right when they were almost done, a bull down in the bottom of the beds that was maybe 100 yards above where we parked the e-bike started bugling. So I'm bugling back at him, and Bryce looks at me and he goes, "What the heck are you doing?" I said, "Well, heck, you guys are about done with that one. I'm just bringing up the next one so that way we can just keep this party rolling." It didn't work. Didn't bring him up. So, okay. If the shot doesn't feel right, don't shoot.
Mhm.
So there was a bull that came in really, really quick. And I knew drawback, everything was just rushed. It just, everything about it just didn't feel right. And so I did go ahead and let down, thankfully, but it was really, really hard to urge not to do. And then once I let down, I noticed that if I had rushed it, I thought this bull was completely broadside. He was actually quartering to me pretty hard, where there was a really good chance that I would have shoulder bladed or skipped off a rib and not gotten any penetration, and basically would have just done a meat wound, flesh wound on that elk. So, and Brandon actually had the same thing happen as well, where he let back down and then, yeah, he realized that it wasn't completely broadside. Sometimes things happen so fast that you don't have a good chance to analyze everything. So if it doesn't feel right, don't shoot, just let down. Now, when Brandon let down, because he was going to rush it because he thought that was his only shot opportunity. Well, he let down, he let things play out. That bull actually ended up coming closer because at that point when he drew, that bull was 48 yards. The bull ended up coming in all the way to about 19 and turning completely broadside. And that's the one that he shot because he showed the patience and didn't rush it, just let it develop. Sometimes there's a lot of times, especially when you're new at elk hunting and you get that elk in there for the first time, you think that's the only shot opportunity and you have to take it immediately. You have to go fast. Show some patience sometimes and just let that thing kind of develop. All right. Other thing, lesson learned. You guys have heard me talk about the game changer call before. I didn't use that thing last year. I used it a ton this year for cow vocalization. Man, does it give depth, especially with that new reed that was field testing. I mean, just the depth of the cow sounds, the control. It just, it actually makes your cow portions of your routines a lot less effort. Because of the back pressure that's in that game changer, you can control your notes a lot easier. You can do note variations a lot easier, and you really have a lot easier time of sounding like multiple elk.
I use mine quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely use it. In fact, there was after a couple of days of doing that, the Bryce and Brandon both pulled their game changers out of their call bag and put it in with them. So it's good. Okay. Another lesson learned. We always keep saying this. We're going to take 2 weeks off. We're going to take 2 weeks off, and we still keep taking 1 week off. After what we saw last week and what we're hearing reports of this week, if you can swing it, 2 weeks off. Now, the way we're going to do it, we're going to take 2 weeks off straight, and it'll be the last 2 weeks of the season. We'll go up on that Friday. We'll hunt through the weekend, hunt all the next week. We'll do a morning hunt the following Friday. Then we'll get up and we'll come back home. Do some laundry, restock supplies, see the family a little bit, spend the day Saturday with them, and then Sunday get up, pack up, go back to camp for an evening hunt, and then hunt that Sunday through to the end. All right. You ready for the number one lesson learned? And this was so much fun. The power of tandem calling. So we worked back into where that 5-point was. And I had been in there 3 more times since I had the encounters with them. Worked that area through solo. No response. Not even seeing an elk. So we went in the last night and we set Brandon up as the caller, and then myself and Bryce and Kevin were kind of a V out in front of him. He sat there and called for an hour and a half straight doing the breeding sequence. Not a single bugle, not a single elk came in. So we had about 45 minutes of light left. So I took the arrow off my string and put it in the quiver, and I walked over to him and I said, "Hey, do you want to do some tandem?" And he goes, "Yeah, what did you have in mind?" I said, "I'm going to take over bringing the breeding sequence, and I want you to act like a bull that came in." He's like, "Okay." So I started doing the breeding sequence, and he acted like a bull that came in with a couple of cows because of the breeding sequence and everything that I was doing. And it got so fun that we started feeding off each other. And in fact, there was one time that he bugled, and I went over the top of him, and he stopped, and he turns around and gives me this look, and he's like, "All right." So the next time I bugled, he went over the top and cut me off. And so we were 5 minutes into the tandem, and all of a sudden we had 3 bulls screaming. 2 bulls were within 150 yards. They were there the whole time. But just there wasn't enough excitement. There wasn't enough going on. But as soon as we started tandem and there was 2 bulls introduced, man, they lit. We even got the big bull up top. They was just, whoa. And I was like, "Oh, dude, please come down. You got a long ways to go, but please come down. I want to see you." So we started moving around through these trees, and we never got more than 15, 20 yards apart. And we got back by this little creek back behind, and I said, "Okay, Brandon," I said, "I want you to get shoulder to shoulder with me 15 yards apart. And as I pace forward, I want you to pace forward, staying right next to me. When I bugle, you bugle. And whatever bugle I do, I want you to do that bugle back." And I would pace up about 30 yards, and I'd turn around and I'd pace back 30 yards. And we're bugling as we're doing this. You guys ever see 2 bulls sit there and mirror each other on video or out in the wild? It's two bulls that are mirroring each other. They're basically sizing each other up right before they fight. And so we incorporated that into the breeding sequence. And then I went over and picked up a stick and just beat the living heck out of a tree. And it just lit those bulls up even more. Cool thing is 2 of those bulls came in for Bryce and Kevin at the same exact time on the exact paths that needed for both of those guys. It was the coolest thing that I'd ever experienced. And as we were kind of getting back to camp, I sat there and said, "Man, I really think there's something about this tandem calling." Because we've done it occasionally, but nothing like we did that night. And the way it lit up, the way it took a completely silent night. In fact, it was so cool during the middle of it with us doing our thing and the bulls bugling, we woke an owl up. Hoo, 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 hoo. And he started getting in the middle of it. So here's us bugling, here's these bulls bugling, here's this owl in the middle. And I'm like, this is the coolest thing in the world. This is just, this is why we do this. So power of tandem calling. We're going to test it more, but from all the notes that I wrote down and everything, and like I said, it's a lot of fun. And so what we talked about was, okay, and sorry, Jim, this is going to throw your number 10 out the window here. Hunting in groups of 4. because then we can basically have the 2 callers, 2 shooters out front. Or even if you're in 3, I guess you can go 2 shooters and or two callers and 1 shooter. But with that group of 4, then we can just rotate everybody around for opportunities. But it definitely holds a power to it that, and it's amazing not only how fast they got vocal, but how fast 2 of those guys came in. And it just got me thinking, and I kind of went through some old footage the last couple of nights and watching old videos on YouTube that I used to enjoy in hunts. That when you see multiple bulls in an area like that are bugling like that, how much excitement it creates and how much the curiosity of those others that are around really want to come in and see what's going on. I mean, are they coming in because of the breeding sequence and dang it, okay, there's another bull of the party, this is real, this is legit, we're going to come into this? Or is it, oh, these dudes are going to fight, I want to get my popcorn in the front row because I want to watch this crap unfold? But it definitely is something that I really think needs to be explored a lot more. And the other thing is too, is you guys have heard me talk. Are you calling like an elk, or are you calling like a human? We definitely created an elk scenario in that. That's not something very many people are doing out there. It's still the breeding sequence. It's still telling that same story, but now it just added a new wrinkle into it. So, all right, guys. So there's my lessons learned for the 2022 elk season. Anybody have any similar lessons, or maybe any of you have a lesson that I didn't talk about?
I struggled with being patient this year.
In what regards?
Well, on the 3rd day, I camped up on the hill for the first couple nights, and then I was coming back down, and I found I was checking some water, some wallows and stuff like that. I knew were up there, and nothing was tracked up, nothing except for at night I'd hear them bugling, but they were going way back up the mountain, and I was by myself, and I've never killed an elk, and the last thing I want to do is go way up there and kill something and then have it rot or something before I come out, anyways, or before I can get it out.
Right.
They were just going out of my range, basically. And on the way back down to my car, I found a little mud hole that I had never seen before. So, oh well, I'm gonna sit here and cow call for a while. And then after about 20 minutes, oh man, the thermals suck. This is wrong. I know the beds are back up there. My scent's going back up towards the beds and blah blah blah. And I stood up and took about 5 steps and looked up, and there was a spike standing there broadside, like just at 25 yards maybe. And then, and then I was just like, whoa, what the fuck? And he was like, no, that's not what I was looking for. And he took off. And on a side note to all that, and this was super weird, but when I got back to my car, there were tracks all around my car, and my windows were covered in slobber. And I think because I live by the ocean, they were coming and licking my windows because of the salt.
All right. So you got a bunch of window licker elk in your area. So
yeah. And I stopped and I talked to some local cowboy guy who was driving cattle, and I asked him, and he's like, got to be an elk. He's like, at that height, and if you saw the tracks, I don't know what else it could be, but.
We actually had that where, first off, yeah, it's amazing how quiet those elk can come in. You didn't hear a thing with that spike coming in.
No, and I broke my rule.
Yeah.
I always sit there for an hour, and I got impatient, and I got up after about 20 minutes.
And that's kind of why I talked about always be ready, because especially when you're not hearing a lot of bugles, you're not getting a lot of responses, you're not getting the call-ins. And in fact, Bryce and I were on the mountainside. We were doing something, and he was kind of starting to get Debbie Downer. And I said, dude, you know how this goes. We could crest up over here and call on the backside, and then all of a sudden we could have elk coming in, and it could be the greatest day we've ever had. It can change just that fast. So always be ready, always be up. But it's tough. And yeah, we had that too. We actually, parked the General, went up on a hunt, and came back. And there was a whole herd that actually walked right next to the General. In fact, I think a couple of them scratched their butt on the side of my General because there was you could see the brush marks where the dirt was rubbed
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, it's again, don't be afraid to spend a little bit of time in an area, even if you're only 50 yards from your vehicle, because they come by. So you never know.
Most everything I heard and saw was within a quarter mile of the road.
Yep, those are kind of those hidden areas that we talk about that a lot of people drive by. So, and that was one of the new areas that we kind of went into. It was that something creek trail that I walked up because, again, if you look at it, it looks like it's all southern exposure. It looks like it's all the hot side of the mountain. But man, all of a sudden I got up in there and it's just kind of that part of the hill is just sunk into a little basin with good dark timber and a lot of water and I mean
Yeah.
cool temperatures and I mean it's just from down below looking up, you would never even imagine that something was like that. And in fact, that was not even the destination that I was heading to. I was actually going to go past that to the basin all the way in the back that I have seen from up above. Well, after I found that, I never made it to that other basin. So that other basin that I told the Grumpy Bunts to go into, he can still go into that other basin and establish that is his. He's just going to go a different route because I don't want him to find this spot. So, all right. How about anybody else? What are some lessons learned?
I had experience on the driving down the road. We're driving down the road and there's a bull and 2 cows. Of course, I had the cow tag, so jumped out, went after them, and they took off and went through the forest. And I saw them go in, so I was shadowing them on the road and went up past the ridge and went down and went up over the top of a ridge. And it was wet. It'd been raining like crazy up there. I mean, there was a lot of rain. As a matter of fact, that's all it did was rain. So I got up on top of the ridge, thought they were going to come over, but I lost them. And I thought, should I do some calls here? But I didn't. And in hindsight, I wish I did. But at the same time, we both filled 2 cow tags. My wife and I both. We filled.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we got our cows, and it was basically off the road, just like you just said. And I actually got mine with, I think it was like an 18-yard shot. The only problem with hers is that we couldn't find it. We're out there like 11 o'clock at night, and all of a sudden my friend Frank, his gun is out, and I'm like, I whip my 40 out. I'm like, where are they coming from? What are we doing? He goes, something's stomping around. It took us forever to find blood, but he's like, let's go out let's go back in the morning. Well, in the morning, the coyotes had eaten the ass end out of the.
Oh.
So we lost the ass end, but it still weighed a couple 100 pounds. So
Yeah, still lots of meat. Well, congrats to you guys.
50 yards further.
Oh.
That would have been it. 50 yards.
It's always the case when you decide to pull out that night and you come back in the next morning. It's always less than 100 yards from where you quit.
Oh yeah. And another lesson learned was you said the derailleur came off the bike.
Yeah.
Oil line came off my wife's quad and burned the quad out.
Really?
Yeah. Didn't know. And it's a Polaris. You can start it.
Yeah.
As soon as you to go, knock.
Oh.
Like, oh.
So doing a little pre-check inspection.
Yeah, I've got a friend that builds national race motors for race cars, and hopefully he can do something with it. But
that's a spendy lesson there.
Yeah. So it is what it is.
How about anybody else? Joel?
Jay? So we were, I got up opening weekend and went up, didn't hear nothing, but I was still kind of recovering from COVID, the second bout of COVID. And so I didn't do a lot of hiking. the next weekend I got out, I think it was the first weekend of September, Labor Day weekend. And I was going to go check out another basin, and I just happened to go bugle off into the same area that I was hunting the weekend before. And that night, and I heard what sounded like a groan, and I wasn't sure what it was, but I was like, maybe it's an elk. I'll go in there in the morning. Went in there about 4:35 in the morning, let off a couple of cow calls immediately. I had 2 bulls bugle, so I had to sit down because it was pitch black and waited till daylight. Started going because I could hear him bugling, keep going away from me, going to bed. And I worked my way to them, and I spooked one of them as I was hiking through there. And when it got light enough, and then they went silent. And I went over and I sat down. It was about 8 o'clock. And from about 8 to 9, every 5 minutes, I just did a lazy bugle. And no response until right about 9 o'clock. I had a cow start going off right above me, maybe 50 yards through the trees. Couldn't see him because there was a lip. And then all of a sudden I had a bull bugle above me, and I had a bull bugle below me. The thermals were still going downhill to the bull below me, so I didn't think he was going to even come near me. And all of a sudden I could hear that bull above me, so I jumped up, ran through the trees about 30 yards, sat down, did some huffs and grunts and some little whines, jumped up, ran across the trees the other direction, sat back down, did a bugle, and the cow started just going crazy above me. And then all of a sudden she went silent, so they started working towards my north side. And so I jumped up, ran through the trees again, kind of did some whines and groans and just shut up. I had the raghorn come in about 20 yards from me and just stood there broadside of me, but I got a spike tag or an antlerless tag in the area that I'm hunting in, so I can't shoot it. Well, that raghorn circled downwind of me, and he's directly in my scent line, and he just stayed right there. So he was getting ready to walk away, let off some groans and a small bugle, and he turned around, stuck his head through the trees, looking at me, and then all of a sudden I seen the big bull coming up below him. And he was a nice bull, but he looked at that other bull and just turned around, walked right back into the trees.
Huh.
And then that little bull took off, and about 5 minutes later, I had a cow walk in right below me about 20 yards. I took a shot, but I had one branch right across and I hit it.
And you never saw it until after you let your arrow go.
Yep.
That's usually the case. That's what happens to me all the time. I'm like, oh, that's nice and clear, and then your arrow always finds that one tiny, and it's always the smallest little branch too that it always finds.
Yeah, but so that was kind of a cool experience, learning that a little bit. I mean, I had no calls for almost an hour, and then they finally started talking.
At 9 o'clock, that's pretty good. So. Yeah, they could have gotten quiet because they were getting close to their bedding area, and then they were in the bedding area just kind of milling around a little bit, and that's what lit them back up again when you kind of create a little bit of excitement in there. Plus the running back and forth and creating movement. So nice.
So it turned out pretty good. I mean, didn't get anything, but it was definitely an experience to remember. So.
And you kind of learn. So because I had talked earlier before you jumped on about the power of tandem calling. And you might want to go back and watch the replay. We had 2 people kind of doing what you did, running back and forth there. Yeah, it created a pretty incredible scenario. So, all right, Mr. J, lessons learned.
Know where your shooters are. I called a cow in to 5 yards to me, and I was going to take her, but my son was to the left of me, and I should have shot, but I didn't want to take a chance
of not knowing where he was. Yeah. Yeah, and in fact, we kind of talked about that when we were doing the tandem calling, because I didn't know. I knew where Bryce was. I didn't know exactly where Kevin was, and in fact, when we were kind of rolling around back when we were doing the tandem calling, I actually kind of rolled up that direction to see if I could see where Kevin was, and oh, dang it, There we go. Thank you. But yeah, when I rolled up on him, he thought I was telling him to bump up, so he actually kind of bumped up a little bit farther forward. And I was like, no, I was just trying to figure out where the heck you were. So, our responsibility. And then Bryce chimes in, Kevin, if Michael ever tells you to stay in a spot, stay in that spot. He will do what he needs to do, moving around back behind you, but he needs to know where you are. And I was like, oh, appreciate that. So how about you there, Mr. Mike Strong? Any lessons pulled from this season?
Sometimes mechanically the stars are just get stacked against you for a year. Uh, I made a point this year of getting my truck in to get a suspension check and everything looked at in the front end. Last year I had a wheel bearing go out and shock bushing wear out. Had to get that fixed. So this year I made a point to get that done and ended up having an oil pump issue. I had to get back to town to get that fixed. And so $2,000 later, I got it back in the mountains, but that took a few days out.
Oh,
So sometimes it seems like you just can't do enough to prevent it.
you know what? It seems like that those times that no matter what you do, just the things, because that's kind of I had that same kind of feeling when I was walking off the mountain after dealing with that big five that first night, because I was like, okay, I've had multiple bulls less than 20 yards this year, and for some reason either I didn't have my bow, or there was a branch block in the vital, or this or that, and I'm like, this is a year of teasers, of just, okay, we're going to tease you. We're going to give you all kinds of images that are going to haunt you in your dreams for the next year until the season rolls back again. But then I actually said, you know what? Liz has the rifle cow tag. So she got the archery tag also, which now we have a 6-day cow hunt. This is going to give us an opportunity to both pack rifles and hunt together on a cow hunt. So it's going to be an opportunity for us to share something. So I kind of changed it a little bit from, okay, it's a season of cards stacked against me and just teasing, to, you know what, my real opportunity is going to be with her during that rifle hunt. And I think there's a good chance that the elk will still be kind of bugling pretty good too on that hunt. So might be kind of fun. So I'm going to test some of my rifle hunt theories and rifle hunt things that I've done in the past that haven't hunted with a rifle for a little while. So we'll see how it goes. Might be kind of fun. So, all right, guys. Well, that is it. Lessons learned for 2022. Appreciate all of you guys joining in. Hopefully, some of the lessons learned kind of gave you guys a few things to think about. Oh, one more lesson that I learned. So, liquid IV. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it. It's a drink powder mix. That stuff is the bomb. It is so good to mix on the mountainside and take in your water with you while you're drinking. You stay really hydrated. Your mental clarity, I mean, just everything with it. I am highly, highly impressed with that liquid IV. And in fact, now each of the guys in camp are drinking liquid IV. So I'm drinking it right now too.
I had a similar experience, but with the Warrior Fuel Elevate this year. That stuff has been really, really good for me. And he's got another one that's a refuel. I've used. I don't think that one comes in the packets, but it's great. Just like after like a hard workout, trying to get ready for the season, something like that. Both of those have been really, really good for me.
Yeah, Warrior Fuel, both those, the refuel and the elevator, great, Mike. I actually used to run those up until last year. Last year I switched and tried a different product, but yeah, Ryan makes some really, really good products at Warrior Fuel, and those two, the refuel and the elevate, yeah, really, really good products. I was really, really kind of impressed with the liquid IV. For one, the price point; two, the multiple different flavors that you get, and the hydration. The only reason I kind of went that route is with the new high blood pressure medication and the diuretic that the doctor has me on, and the possibility of cramping, which did happen on the mountain until I started drinking the Elevate. I never cramped once, not at all. So worked really well.
Mm.
So,
That's good. I get cramps like crazy.
you get the Elevate, or I mean, get the liquid IV. So
Okay.
yeah, will
Thanks.
definitely help.
So
All right, guys.
Yeah.
Well, we will sign this off. We will close this out. As always, keep calling, keep practicing. More importantly, they'll have fun, and we will see you guys in 2 weeks on the next Wapiti Live Q&A. So have a great night, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
See you guys.